Hello, Internet, and welcome to episode number 243 of the Comic Watchers Show. He's Chad, I'm Matt, we're the Watchers, and this is our show. So this week, we are going to be talking about Jimi Hendrix' Purple Haze, excuse me, like I don't know that or something, coming at you from Titan Comics. We are with one of the authors, along with Mello Brown. This is DJ Ben Hameen. How are you, sir?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Before we get into the book itself, I wonder if you'd tell us a little bit about your comics origin and how you came to love comics and write comics and be of comics.
Oh, wow, that's a long origin. Long short story is like I was just telling y'all before we went on air. I grew up in Houston, Texas, and I was reading from before I can remember, and then I was reading comics from very early on. Also, I've always been a creative of some sort. I grew up wanting, my main goal was to be a film director. It was just like I had no other thought process. Star Wars was my life, and I just wanted to be George Lucas. And so then I got into comics. I can't remember exact age, but it was Chris Claremont and X-Men that pretty much started me off. And well, that, and like I always tell people, some of the first comics I ever read was Iron Man, when Tony Stark was drunk and he's like going through a blizzard.
Yes,
And
great.
yeah, it's such an incredible issue, but it was like one of the first comics I read, and as a kid I was like, what the hell is this? But I loved it immediately. So it was stuff like that just really turned me on to comics. And so I've been reading and thinking about them. And as a lot of people on the internet know me from the For All Nerds show, where I'm one of the hosts, and we're a long-running podcast about geek and pop culture. And I talk a lot of comics on there. I have a segment, Comics I Copped, where I've been talking about, just everything I'm reading, everything I'm thinking about, old and new, forever. And then the writing and creating of comics kind of happened happenstance in a way. I've written for television. I worked on a season of American Gods with Mello Brown, my brother. We've done a lot of other projects, some that haven't been, I guess, produced yet. But we've done a lot of stuff together. And he was working on Blade Runner for Titan Comics. He did the book Blade Runner Origins, which is an excellent book. I urge everyone to check it out. His whole run on Blade Runner has been really dope. And he's like revitalized the franchise and done a lot of work in the canon with the franchise. So it's really dope. And Titan came to him and asked him if he wanted to pitch on this Jimi Hendrix project they'd been trying to get off the ground. And they had Tom Mandrake attached to it as the artist, and they were working with the estate. And they didn't want to do a traditional autobiography, but that's pretty much all they had. And well, I mean, that's not a little bit, because Tom Mandrake is, such a monster, but that's what they had at that point. And so as soon as he got that email, he says within 20 minutes, he emailed me and was like, okay, we're going to do this together. Or would you like to do this with me? And I immediately was like, hell yeah. I had no second thought, because I love working with Mello, one, and we hadn't done something in a second for that when that came up. And two, just the thought of working. I've had a long running relationship musically in my life with Jimi Hendrix, and so it was just such an opportunity. I could not pass that up. Of course, I'm gonna be like, yeah, I'll at least pitch on this. Yeah, we'll see what happens, but yeah.
Chat?
So that's how it went to get there. Yeah.
Awesome.
So, as we said, it's not a strict autobiography of Jimmy. Kind of, give us the overview of what this what it is, and kind of how you guys came up with the concept.
All right. Well, the elevator pitch that I pretty much narrowed down to a couple sentences at Comic-Con was, it's Jimi Hendrix in space using the power of his music to battle against an evil intergalactic fascist empire. I said using the power of Jimi Hendrix. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Jimi Hendrix in space using the power of his music to battle against an evil intergalactic empire. That's the short essence of it. The longer essences, there's a lot to it. We really poured our heart and soul into it. It's a book to me. Wait, what was the exact question so I can answer it? Because I'll go off on a tangent.
I forgot the question. But
you like tangents here. It's all good.
Oh, okay.
I guess I was saying
what is the book
like
about?
the broad
What is the book
overview.
about? Okay, yeah. What is the book about? Right. So the book is like I said, it's that, and we designed it, or we had intentions of designing it on a few levels. Like it is a space opera at one thing. It is inspired by all the great space operas that you know about, Dune, Star Wars, etc. down the line. And then it is also, I like to say, it's a space opera that features Black people, or it is a Black space opera. It's two different ways of looking at it, because it is also very intentionally about Black music in America and the power of that music and the tradition and what the future holds for it, the past, and all the implications of all that in space as well. It's metaphorically told through this story in space. So it's about that. It's definitely about, like I said before, about a battle against fascism. Mello Brown likes to describe it as a warm hug in these times. It's a space opera adventure that, as my nephew describes the book, it is that book with, he's 4. It's the book with the space lions. So, it has a lot of different elements to it. And that's why I really am super proud of it, because it really operates on a lot of different levels to me. And I think you can enjoy it on a lot of different levels. And that's why I wanted it to be enjoyed on a lot of different levels. So I think that people have been. So I'm really proud of that.
I think what caught me, aside from just the structure and just what the story is about, is the fact that
that's so dope. Sorry. I'm just so hyped when people say something like structure and it.
No, definitely, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. We used to have a drinking game with one of our former hosts where every time he said narrative, we'd do a shot.
Like, what do you mean? Like,
well, because he would overuse the term, and so it just kind of became a joke.
Got you. Okay.
The shot, but the narrative here is its own thing, as you say, and I want to come back to that because you spoke to some elements about Black culture that I'd like to touch on, but I wanted to talk about the fact that you're taking an historical figure, Jimi Hendrix, and putting him in this completely new context, and yet it feels authentically Hendrix. How the heck did you do that?
First off, I have to thank and shout out to Janie Hendrix, Jimmy's sister, who is the main executor of the Hendrix estate, and we worked very closely with her throughout this project from the beginning. That's who we basically pitched to on day one, and she helped edit and guide us throughout it. And that was basically right away. She was like, "This is my brother. My brother loves science fiction, da 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 da." He loved all of this type of stuff. And then everything that Mello and I read about him went to that. And then his music leans to that. A lot of his songs, especially his lesser known songs, some of his offcuts have superhero science fiction references in the lyrics without the music itself being so out otherworldly and timeless, and feels like Jimmy was operating on a different plane than everyone else then and now. So that just all leans to it, and I think helps give it that authentic feel where it feels like Hendrix. And that was something like, even when I got that basic elevator pitch to people and I was like, well, this is what it is, people would immediately respond like, sounds about right. I told a friend of mine the other day, and he's one of my best friends who I've known, we were both grew up reading comics, and he's like, so basically what you're telling me is when Hendrix died on Earth, this is where he went. Like that whole choking on food isn't what, isn't the real. And I was like, there you go. Yeah. So it just feels right. Him using his music to battle against the forces of evil is something that he did on this earth, and I feel would do on any earth. So it just feels like that.
Well, that's part of Hendrix's legacy, and why it's still so strong today is he did things not only like as an instrumentalist, but as a songwriter, as a musician, as a lyricist that nobody else was doing and has done since. And I mean, you listen to some of his final works, and he was starting to tap into jazz a little bit and explore those forms of expression, and it just all coheres into this body of work that just simply can't be duplicated. He did it in such a short amount of time. That it's really kind of mind blowing. Like he was, look, I don't know how old you are, but I'm 44, and I used to think that 27 was old, right?
Yeah.
I look back on it now, and I'm like, damn, he was a puppy.
Yeah, a puppy. Yeah, straight up.
Like, there's no telling what more he could have given the world. But that's my own little own little tangent there. Chad, why don't you jump in and save me from myself?
So when you were working on the book, did you listen to his music for inspiration? How did you kind of get in that mind frame to um, create?
Definitely a lot of his music. Like the first thing is once we got even before I think I actually got the gig, I started doing just research on him, reading, books, things of that nature, reading just everything I could and listening to his music more. I've always been a big fan of I always have to, preface this with the term gypsy is a slur against the Romani people. But the Band of Gypsies album was the first, pretty much other than like the big songs that everyone knows and the big moments that everyone knows, that was my first real exposure to Hendrix. My uncle gave me that vinyl back in the day, and I was like, oh, okay, this is some, like you were talking about how he started getting in jazz, but he also started into funk, R&B, just a lot of different things other than the rock. And that's why that album struck a chord with me personally, because while I love rock, and even by that point I was a huge, let's say, Nirvana, Metallica, Guns, down the line, I could name rock bands for all days. I still wasn't a fan of Jimmy like that, as a rock artist. I liked him, but I didn't get it at that point. And then when I heard the band album, hearing Machine Gun, Message to Love, They Don't Know is such a song to me because it's sampled by Digital Underground. And I knew the sample from before that, but I didn't know that that's where it came from. So when I heard that for the first time, I was like, oh shit, they sampled Jimi Hendrix on one of my favorite Digital Underground songs. This is crazy. This album's crazy. And so that was like one of my first real things getting into him. So I listened to that a lot. And then not just Jimmy, I was also like trying to listen to a lot of rock music from Black artists, especially, but just rock in general throughout the ages. Because like I said, like I always tell people, it's not just about Jimmy. While it's a love letter to Jimmy, it's also a love letter to music. And it has a lot of things that I've wanted to say about music for a long time. So there was a lot of things embedded in this book. So I was just listening to everything because I wanted to hear different stuff. But then we also use so much of his lyrics and incorporate that into the imagery and stuff. So there was a lot of research where we were just digging through lyrics and digging through songs to find songs and lyrics that fit the mood of what we were trying to say.
So while you were, researching,
did you find anything that you didn't expect to find?
oh, that was going to be my question. So, so you,
the first thing is that, like,
great mind.
Yeah, is that how definitely great minds is like how deep he was into the sci-fi thing. And then the second was, I knew this, but I guess I was reminded of it because, like, it immediately. I always tell people from hearing the beginning of Machine Gun when he talks about this, shout out to all the soldiers in Chicago and in Vietnam, so it's like he first says, we're dying on these streets. And so he's letting you know what it's about right away. But that was the thing I was very reminded of, is how much of a Black man Jimmy was and how much it meant to him and how much he was aware of his place in everything that was going on at that time. and what he was trying to say with his music and with his identity, and how it's been misinterpreted throughout the ages. It's pretty much like any great person, you know, their image and sound and voice becomes commodified and reduced to a slogan or to 2 or 3 moments. And that's something we touch upon in the, you know, like that was the first few pages. And I think that was in our pitch to Janie, was we wanted to talk, you know, we wanted to have that scene where he sets his guitar on fire and he's disgusted with it. You know, and that was like right away, because that's the image that Jimmy's been reduced to. And it's to this day, you know, you see that image over and over again, and you will to the end of time, because it's such an iconic image. But at the same time, it just reduces this man and everything he did to, you know, a stage show.
So besides Hendrix in the book, who are some of the other, you know, characters that we kind of who it follows and help flesh out the story?
Okay, well, there's a lot of people I can't name. You know, you got to kind of figure them out. Allegedly, they're in the book because we, you know, for legal reasons, we reference a lot of people who, if you know Hendrix's story and you know his time frame, there's definitely a lot of shout outs and actual references to other people who were around him at that time. But then there's also 2 of my favorite characters ever, Vesper and Raina, who are 2 sisters who are basically involved with Hendrix, and they also have their own storyline that is going on throughout the book. And their Vesper is Hendrix's, I don't know what to exactly describe her without giving away things, but they have a history together, you know, and they're at this point she's operating as his manager, agent, you know, friend, everything. And she's deeply involved in the story that we're telling, and her sister Raina is deeply involved in it. And I really love them so much because they're saying a lot about, they're like a mirror to a lot of the things that Hendrix is doing, and holding up a mirror to the things that he's doing and examining the things that he's doing and like checking him on the things that he's doing. So that was one of my favorite parts of the book. And I really, like, I'm in love with them as much as any other character that I've ever read or, you know, created. So yeah, I love them so much.
So you had mentioned earlier, a couple times now.
Oh, and Backwash Cortez, one of my other favorites.
Oh, no, go on.
Yeah, Backwash Cortez is another character who shows up. He is the bowling ball headed antagonist, I would call Backwash, at least in this point in the story arc. And Backwash pretty much embodies all of my dealings with shady promoters over the years as a musician and DJ myself, and party promoters and things of that nature, record promoters, record A&Rs, record labels, all that type of thing. And that is who Backwash is in this story. And I just love him so much. And shout out to it's Fabian Cortez. I imagine him as Backwash's Fabian's space cousin, I guess. Yeah. With his bowling ball head. And that's just one of the favorite things that I've ever created. And the fact that people let me put this into the book is, you know, a joy that will never be taken away from me.
That's outstanding.
It's just the things you can do in
tell
comics.
us a little bit about. Absolutely, we. That's part of why we love comics, because there's an unlimited budget and an unlimited imagination.
There it is. And before you answer that question, before you ask that question, I'm definitely going to say that was one of our main goals, or especially one of my main goals when I wrote this, was to, beyond Tom's limits and Justin's limits, I wanted to write it as if we had no budget, and to put in as many scenes where it was just things that you could only do in comics, and things that would be extremely difficult to duplicate except in like animation, because I would love to see this animated, but I wouldn't want to see it live action, because I want all these wild ass scenes, and that'd be tough. Yeah.
I got you. So, tell us about working with Tom Mandrake. Like, how did he come to be involved in this project?
He was already involved, and I'll say this again and again. First of all, both him and Justin are just absolute gentlemen, as well as being geniuses to me. And the other side of it is, as much as I grew up reading comics, I really had no idea who Tom Mandrake was when they first said, "Oh, well, Tom Mandrake's the artist we have on this, and we'd like you to pitch on it." I was like, "All right, cool," And they showed me a piece of his art, the one that's actually on the purple cover of the book, where it's just Jimmy, and I was like, "Well, that's a fantastic portrait of Jimmy," and I love how he's doing the music as like magical energy coming off his guitar, so. He's vibing with the same type of vibe I'm on right away without even speaking to him. But I really did not know who he was like that. And then I started Googling him. And I'm like, oh my God, this dude is one, he's just so talented. And then he's like one of those classic dudes like Neil Adams, my all-time favorite Art Adams, someone who can just do John Byrne, do all the type perspective, layout, just realism, just a fucking artist. Sienkiewicz, like, just one of those. And so I'm just Googling and going through all his art and finding out, oh, he worked with all these people. He did the Spectre. And that was the other thing. I was such a Marvel head, and I really didn't read horror comics, especially. So the Spectre was just something I was avoiding. So I was not reading that type stuff. And so I missed him. But once I started Googling, I'm like, okay, this guy can do anything I need, and he's a monster. And then we get on the Zoom with him, and he's just like such a gentleman, such a sweetheart, man. Tom is so chill. And then he just had a lot of the same ideas that we had, or that I had, especially. I wanted to draw the music in a way that, at least if it hadn't been, not that it hadn't been done before, because pretty much everything has been done, but in an innovative way as much as we could, and not a traditional way of rendering music on screen. We wanted to stay away from like the squiggly notes floating in the air. And we both said that on our first phone call to each other. So I immediately was like, okay, this guy gets it. We're going to get each other. And then honestly, that's the other side of it that I have to talk about and I have to give a lot of respect to both of them, Justin and Tom, on this, because they're two white guys and they're drawing black people and they're coloring black people. But they both, like Tom, I Googled something where he had this page from the 90s and it was like a bunch of black people in the hood, but they weren't caricatures. And from the 90s, he had all these little details where they looked like they were in the 90s. So I didn't even have to talk to him. I was like, this gets it, like he's nice, so I didn't have to say nothing. But in Justin, I didn't have to say anything. They just, like Justin, the shading and the tones, like how Vesper and Raina came out looking, they're just so gorgeous. And then the colors, they both have their distinct skin tone, which is realistic and true to nature. I cannot talk enough about them. I think they're just both, so great. And I just learned so much about collaboration and about trusting people and about letting, artists work. And this is I've written, a lot of scripts, but this is my first published comic book ever. So it was a lot of things that I had to learn on the fly about it, and reading them is much different than creating them.
So, kind of following that train of thought, being your first comic book, what was probably the biggest thing that you learned that you plan to apply to your next project in comics?
Shut the fuck up. That was the first thing I learned. Let other people work. Let your artists do this, let your colorists do that, let your letterer do that. You write the book, and then you let them do their job, and trust them. And then other stuff, it's like things that I knew, but I was just applying, because as I've always been a student of creation, no matter how, even if I hadn't done it, I was always reading interviews or reading comic scripts and just reading, how people thought about the form and how they thought about putting it together, like the idea of the budget, and then like the idea of not overdoing your artist budget is something I learned from Kieran Gillen, where he talked about, not stressing Jamie McKelvey the fuck out, and like if he gave him something for this page, let him enjoy the next page. If he gave him something very hard on this one page, let him do something that Jamie enjoys. So I knew what Tom liked to draw. So there was a lot of stuff where I was like, okay, Tom loves weirdness, Tom loves monsters, Tom loves all this, anything different, So I'm like, do it. And then another thing, something I learned immediately, especially working with someone like Tom, was to just let go on stuff like, okay, I see things in my head because I grew up, like I say, directing and thinking of things in camera angles and all that. So I would have different layouts in my head that I would see, and then Tom would send it back with a completely different layout, and it would be way better and just iller than anything I would think of. So I, from that point, learned to just let them do it, and then kind of do it on the Marvel method where they would send the pages, and then I would rewrite my words to fit their art because I'd already sent them full scripts. But then when they came back to me, I would adjust for them because one, that's something I also know is that a lot of first-time writers write too many words. And I was determined to be the opposite of that and cut as much of my dialogue, scene descriptions, anything that was on page as possible. I was relentless. I hope to be. And even now I look at it like too much, but yeah, it is what it is. Yeah, that there's always going to be wanting to edit things now, especially after you see it in person. So, yeah.
And how has working on this comic, influenced your music, beside your music career? Or how did your music career uh, also, influence your work on the comic?
Yes, in both ways, I would say more so the latter. That my music career, because I've been doing music and like I've been DJing long at this point, more time. I've been DJing more years than not, in my life. Like more of my years have been, surrounded by music than they haven't been. And I didn't grow up like that either. I didn't get into music as heavily as I was until about high school when I started DJing. That's when the music bug just took over me. Because before that, I was such a visual person. I just looked at movies. I watched a million movies. I read a million comic books. And in high school, music just hit me in a way I just never thought about it like that before. And it just changed my life. And I just became obsessed with it and obsessed with the history of it and obsessed with like this later as I especially got into hip hop deeply and how it samples things and how it was created and how it refurbishes old music and uses the vibrations of old music where we're experiencing feels and things that you just can't recreate and ideas and just more like feelings and vibes. And that idea struck with me. And then what stuck with me and what's been a long thing that ran into this book is this theory of the river of music and how it's changed and morphed over time. It's been really fascinating to me. It's something that's just always been in my head. So that was something like, oh, we're doing a book on music. Okay, well, I'm putting this in right away. That's like the first thing, I am putting this in. And then we're going to get some space dragons. Which eventually, that Mello will tell you that was like my, first two things. I was like, yo, all right, I can talk about this river of music, and then I want some dragons in space, and that eventually led to the Dabaka, the giant space lions that we see in this. But that's where that started because I just wanted that imagery of Jimi Hendrix on a dragon, which I didn't exactly get in the book, but it was certain type of imagery I was trying to evoke of like the rock imagery, the classical rock imagery that honestly we see a lot of, with the hair bands and stuff like that in the 70s and 80s.
Mhm.
And I wanted to make sure that Jimmy got that imagery. I wanted to put Jimmy on the Black Velvet posters and Jimmy on the side of vans and hopefully inspire that with this book where people eventually someone, does this on the side of a van. So, yeah.
So
As
looking
you,
at the
oh, go ahead.
at the okay, looking at this as a piece of Jimi Hendrix ephemera and part of his working with his estate and learning about the man himself, whatever you didn't already know, I should say, and contextualizing it in the larger black culture that you were mentioning earlier. What kind of special care did you take to ensure that sort of was communicated on page?
That's a great question. Let me.
I'm not sure if I phrased that very well
No,
because I
no,
know what I'm trying. I know what I want to say sometimes,
Yeah.
and then my brain just gets out ahead of me.
I think I get it though, and that goes to one thing that I again have to really thank Janie for, because one of her first things that she said was, "I don't want to see drugs and sex," especially traditionally.
Right.
And at first I was like, but immediately after I thought about it, I got it, because that's one of the big problems with Jimi Hendrix's legacy, is that a lot of his imagery and what people think of him, the first things they think of him is drugs and then women. He was a
Right.
party animal and he did every drug. And a lot of people think that the music came from the drugs. And that's just not it. Like, Jimmy is an genius. I mean, genius isn't a good enough word. A prophet on guitar. He was just beyond what people should do in this instrument, like you said, in this short amount of time. And that didn't come from drugs. That comes from dedication and from just being talented, and then playing and learning and studying with all these great people and wanting to be what he was, where he was dedicated to getting better every day and growing every day. So I got it right away. And so that was one of the things that I was like, okay, I get it. And we didn't want that to be the imagery of him. We wanted
Right.
him to be this imagery of this freedom fighter, of this strong person, of all the things that he was in real life. Sure, he did, have his issues with drugs, like a lot of great creatives do. But what his ideals were something different. He was not sitting around like, oh, I'm a drug addict. That was not like what he thought about all day. He was thinking about a lot of the things in his writing and obviously in his music. So that was something that we wanted to do. And then I think the other side of it kind of just comes naturally. I would say, I don't want to say, like, people have said that one person asked us, are we feel like the caretakers of Jimmy's legacy? And I can't say that. We wrote one book, and two, the idea of like protecting blackness isn't something I really think about, because I'm just going to be me, and that's going to come naturally. I think everyone's going to have their own interpretation of what blackness is to them, whatever, all this nonsense is, to them. I'm just living my life, and in the way that I write and create is going to naturally take a stance of showing the greatness of what people like Jimmy have done, and what, like I say, this legacy of Black music in this country has done. And by me just saying that, like, I don't want to say stating the facts, it kind of presents the case for itself. It is the legacy of America. The creation of the various genres of Black music have defined the history of America in so many different ways that it's just, it's one of those things. It just is what it is. Culture and life were brought through this country through music and through art. And the majority of the music, if not 100% of it, like all the various genres, all are offshoots of Black artists and Black musicians. So,
Yeah, I was just thinking about that the other day. Like 5, 6 major genres that of music that you can think of: the blues, jazz, rock and roll, hip hop, R&B, probably more that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head.
yeah.
All can be attributed and directly sourced to Black people and Black culture.
Yep.
And then you have country music, which is very, very, very fucking white to
But
this day.
even country is just blues. It's just it's like it went from blues to bluegrass to country. And
Yeah.
even that was all, so it's like there's something that it was an idea that I came about, I think, while writing this book, where I realized that we as a people we only make blues music. It's just the technology and time has changed the genre. Because I'm of a person who doesn't really believe in genre. One, I don't. I think I think genre is just a thing to separate things and define things, and a lot of people need that, but it just really doesn't make sense when you really look at it, because it's just music. But I think we as a people in this country have only made blues music and protest music, and which is also blues music. And those two things have just mutated through technology and time, circumstance, and things of that nature.
Right on, man. Yeah, I can't disagree with that.
Yeah.
Chad?
So are there any other, not to kind of, you know, typecast yourself as the guy who does the rock, or the musician comic books, but um, are there any other, um, bands or rock stars that you perhaps would, you know, consider taking a similar approach to?
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, without getting myself typecast. A lot of them are in this book. Like I said, there's a lot of references in this book. That was something I really prided myself on, was stuffing it with as many Easter eggs and references to obscure and well-known things. There are, I mean, blatant, shout outs to big movies as well as obscure movies, as well, bands from every genre you can imagine. There are definitely, at least a nod to in this book. And so some of the people name, or I won't say name, but very much hinted at in this book are some of the people. And I don't want to name anyone right now, but there are other people. There's even people that right now, like, I would say, the thing is, like, a lot of my stuff is just going to be influenced by music. There's no way around it. It's just who I am. Like, I always tell people, as for this is where I do my podcast from and everything. And right here in front of me, in my hands, like now, like I'm tapping it on it so you can hear it, is my turntable. It's like, it's just right in front of me at all times. It's just a part of me. So I can't imagine doing anything that doesn't involve music in some way. But
Right.
I'm also developing 2 different books right now, and one is super music related, and the other I wouldn't say is, but I'm sure it will turn into it at some point. Yeah.
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 So what music is capturing your imagination right now?
Oh man, that's changes daily, but over the last few months, someone, and this came after I wrote the book, and if it would have definitely been more shout outs to him if I had gotten this obsession, with Thelonious Monk. Like, I read part of his biography, or one of the biographies on him, and I just playing the living life out of his music, and just really appreciating his timing and everything else about Thelonious, and his sense of style, and just who he was as a person. So that is for older stuff. New, especially in hip hop, I thought the West Coast just had an incredible year this year. Like, I thought Vince Staples' album is really incredible. I thought Kendrick's album obviously is pretty good. I think Schoolboy Q is one of my favorite albums of the year. Vince and Schoolboy Q and Tyler, the Creator. I think Tyler is also just one of these genius people who doesn't get enough credit just yet. But I think Tyler goes in that pantheon of people that we need to really discuss. So. And then, Beyonce is someone else who I always give a shout out to, because that woman is, if you want to talk about these game-changing people, she is right there with any of them. So there's that. And then just all kind of stuff, man. I've been making I released some of my own music earlier this year, which is more like dance house music. So I listened to a lot of that, and that's what I pretty much make all the time. But I'm also just, like I say, I'm a genreless person, so I just make anything that strikes my fancy that day. So
Are there
Any?
any,
Oh, go ahead, Chad.
just so you don't get typecast as the music, comic book guy, are there any characters, from either, the companies that you would,
oh god,
particularly like to have a shot at?
so many. Yes, so many. Oh man. Long shot is, it just rings in my head immediately. It's usually long shot, and then if you can, he's kind of tough to see right there, but there's the HasLab Galactus figure, and up over here, out of camera view, I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different 9 versions of Galactus over there. Galactus is like my all-time favorite character. Like, I'm completely obsessed with Galactus. Another obscure one and because I saw Ron Lim at San Diego Comic-Con and got to talk to him and tell him how much he meant to me, because his run on Silver Surfer was when I started falling in love with Galactus. And because of that, also I had to tell him his run on Cyforce and he didn't do DP7, but Cyforce and the rest of the new universe characters, Starbrand, DP7, all of that joint. I would love to, give them a reboot or something. Because
New Universe is a tough nut to crack. Like there have been several attempts at it over the years. I mean, Warren Ellis couldn't crack more than 6 issues.
I don't know if I have anything for it, but I would just just off the top, those were things that I read religiously.
Sure.
I have nothing for it, but Nth Man is another character that I don't think, because I've talked to Hammer about it and he told me what the whole story was supposed to be. It was supposed to have 6 more issues. I don't think there's really more to say that. That's just that's a perfect joint. Long Shot. Let's go back to Long Shot.
Yeah, Long Shot.
It's fucking awesome. Long Shot and Spiral. Yeah, I could write about. Yeah.
Okay, Marvel, are you listening?
It would go to music though. That's the problem. I mean, you got Dazzler and it's gonna go to music. It's going to music immediately.
That's okay. It fits with Long Shot and Mojo World and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Jack of Hearts, so I can make some artists really sad about their life.
Yeah,
he's like, whenever I see the guys from Marvel Legends, it's like before they gave me a new Long Shot, it was always Long Shot, and then Jack of Hearts. And they're always like, it's not happening, Ben. And then the other one who I didn't get to mention, Cypher. Because Cypher is my, one of my top 10 mutants. I love any X-Men, I'd write any of them, but I effing love Cypher, man. He is just such a special person to me. When he first got killed, I lost it. That was one of the most heartbreaking moments to me in life.
Well, the poor guy, he just kind of fell over and everyone.
Oh my God. Don't talk about it, man. Come on.
And then everyone's like, but where's Cypher?
He said, I won't do it again, Rain, and dies. It is horrific. And yeah, they don't even realize he's dead. Oh God. Oh, that's how you write a fucking comic, though, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Louise Simonson giving up all day.
I've never cursed her out for that. I've met her and I've never been like, yo, what the? Because I streamed on Brian K. Vaughan. I streamed on him, boy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite Brian K. Vaughan?
Ooh, it's not Saga, because I gave up on it after 50. Yeah, that was enough of that. It might be Pride of Bad Dad. That was the first. Field. Yeah, that was the first thing, I think. But then it's I'm blanking. What's right before Saga?
Why the Last Man?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Ex Machina?
No. It's definitely not Ex Machina. I was so like, what did I just read when I finished that?
Ex Machina has a downer of an ending.
Yeah, I mean, downer is like, what? It was more just like, all right, I guess. I don't really know what I just, yeah. I don't know. A harder question for me would be like, what's my favorite Gillen? Because that's where I, But no, it wouldn't. It's still Wicked and Divine, because it's the greatest comic ever made.
Okay.
Yeah, or one of them. Yeah, it's one of them.
So where do you stand? Let's get back a little bit to the subject at hand of Jimi Hendrix, and tell us what is your favorite Hendrix album
and band. And then lately, I really got into. There's a blues compilation that the state put out that's official, where they compiled all his blues joints, and that joint I've been playing the life out of.
That was my first Hendrix album.
That's crazy, because that one is so different than hearing all his other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I also love the joint that What Do You Call It is on. If 6 Were 9. That album I got into while making this.
Oh yeah,
Book.
Axis, Bold as Love.
Yep. Yeah. That's the one I got into while making this book.
Okay,
So,
all right,
yeah.
that's good inspiration.
Yeah.
Yeah, that blues album, man, it just hits. Those first
It
notes,
hits.
that
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah,
No.
just
No.
flawless.
Yep.
Now I'm gonna have to listen to it.
Yeah, no, I didn't get into that till after the book was done, but I think because we're looking to do a sequel, and so that's going to definitely influence a
Okay,
lot of
all
that.
right. That was actually where my question was going. Is how much fuel do you have in the tank for a sequel?
Oh God, multiple, yeah, because this is like I said, we put a lot into it. We intentionally wanted to create a lived-in universe.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a lot of thought into even just the economy of the planet that, a lot of the action takes place on and why things are happening on that planet. There's a lot of backstory that's told, and a lot of stuff that I'm also super proud of is that once again, doing this things that you can only do in comics, there's just a lot of stuff that is not told but shown. There's a lot
Right.
of backstory that's really shown in this book, and like some things that involve with Backwash Cortez and where he is at the end of the book and why he's there is, just shown in panels. And that was something I was like, oh, that's perfect. I was very proud of things of that nature. And then Raina and Vesper, to me, could carry their whole own series. Like there's panels at the end of the book showing where they could be, and there's like multiple things where they're going. And in the next volume, I already know where they have a lot of stuff involving them that has to happen. Yeah, we structured this to be somewhere in the middle of the story. That's the other thing, it's like there's a lot of stuff that's happened before this, and there's a lot of stuff that's happening that will happen after. So yeah, we could definitely write prequels, sequels, spinoffs. There's a lot, and I think if we hopefully made a universe where other people could play in it, that's what
Yeah.
I hopefully made it where it's like where we made it where it's like we said lived in enough where people see all these things. Oh, I would like to talk about that. I'd like to talk about that, and it inspires people to do things that I'm not seeing, or that Mello's not seeing, or that Tom and Justin aren't seeing.
So how has the you I know we talked briefly at New York Comic Con, and sounds like you went to San Diego. How are people reacting to seeing you at those shows and hearing about the book?
It's been interesting because, like I say, all this is new to me in a way. Like I'm a journalist. I've been, the host of For All Nerds forever. So, and even before that, I've been a journalist just most of my life. As long as I've always been interested in documenting things. So I've done a lot of documentary work on hip hop and music in general, and I've interviewed a lot of different artists throughout my life even before podcasts, before I was some people know I was a member of the Combat Jack Show, one of the greatest hip hop podcasts of all time. But even before that, I'd been interviewing people since, time. So that side of it, I've been doing. And I'd been to Comic-Con, New York Comic Con for like 10 years straight. So I'd walked Artist Alley, 10 years straight. But I'd never sat on the other side of it once in my life. Never done any of this. San Diego was when we debuted the book, and there was like the first time I'd done press like that, where I was the opposite. Normally I walk into the press room and talk to somebody, and this time I was sitting in the press room and people kept walking in and talking to me. So that was very interesting, and I loved it. Honestly, I can't lie, because I love talking about this book. I'm like I keep saying, I'm so proud of it, and there's so many layers and aspects to it that I like to talk about. And because this is my first time doing the book, I'm kind of looking for the seal of approval a lot. So I'm kind of like, hey, you liked it? Oh, that's awesome. Let's talk about it. And I want to know why people liked it and what they got from it. And then I like to talk, like when you were talking about things like structure, I'm like, oh, that's dope. I'd like to talk about that because we had all these ideas and things, and then it's seeing it on paper and it's figuring out how that works, and then how people will appreciate it, how people will absorb it. It's all these things. So that was that. like I said, San Diego was all the press and all that. And then New York Comic Con was my first time having to sit there and sell to people, even though I've done a lot of that. That's the thing. I approach things because, like you asked me before about DJing and all that, that was such an influence on me. So I was different. Like when Chad, you know, when you walked up, I'm going to start selling you this book, you know, immediately. Like it's like that's what I do, you know. And so I was a bit aggressive, but I think it worked, and that's who I am. You know, I'm very outgoing when I'm on. This is all a character I play, but when I'm playing this character, I'm definitely, you know, hey, let's do it. And then I keep saying how proud I am of this. And I am. And then I just think Justin, Tom, and everyone else did such amazing work that I'm like, oh, pick this book up. I don't care if you think my writing is crap. Look what these dudes did with this art. You know what I mean? It's fucking amazing. Like I said that once I started seeing their pencils come. Once I started seeing Tom's pencils come in, I was like, I don't care if we wrote, you know, the worst book ever. This dude has drawn one of the best books ever. So it's that at least. So yeah.
Right on. Well, I think that is just about all right. Well, no, we've got 10 more minutes. Yeah, we're good.
Why
So,
don't you tell us about your For All Nerds, that your show?
yeah,
Oh, all right, awesome. Yeah, well, For All Nerds is myself and Tatiana King, and we were founded by, like I said before, Combat Jack Show, the legendary Reggie Osei. Rest in peace to him, and Dallas Penn. So we were founded by them, and basically we've been the podcast that discusses geek and pop culture from the perspective of people of color since we began, and we like to be a very intellectual podcast that very much is also juvenile and just full of jokes. We examine things from an angle of, you know, we love this stuff, but we also don't take it too seriously. But we do take it seriously. That's the other thing. You know, I think we approach things in a way that a lot of people just haven't done before us or since. And I think we're very unique. I think Tatiana and I are just two really great host. You know, I don't know. It's tough to talk about. But we've interviewed everyone and their mama. You know, we've also just reviewed every show that under existence, every movie you could think about. And then we just talked a lot of different things. Like one of the episodes I'm very proud of recently is we had a post-election episode where we were just talking about ways to deal with, you know, the stress of what's going on in this country and still to enjoy yourself and live your life, and how to be a nerd and, you know, still appreciate all the things that we appreciate while dealing with everything else that's going on in your life.
wow. Chad, maybe we need to steal a few of those ideas. I'm especially intrigued by how to live post-election because
oh man, yeah.
yeah.
I find posting memes on Facebook helps.
Yes. Absolutely. Me, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for being my meme dealer, Chad.
Anything that brings joy is what we kept saying, because it's like,
I think you just hit it perfectly on the head. It's whatever brings joy, man. Because if you choose to focus on all of the really terrible things that are happening and are going to happen, then yeah, you're just playing to somebody else's music, and you know that's no fun. It's no good. It's no good for anybody. So
something that really made me happy was someone posted this the other day, and they said this is one of their favorite panels of recent time, and that's just crazy to me because it was a panel from our book, and it's when Jimmy was talking about, or Hendrix was talking about, they keep trying to use the same war drums on us, but they don't know that this planet has found a new rhythm. And that's pretty much something that I feel, you know, like the tricks have always been the same, and it's always the same old nonsense. You know, just it is what it is. America is this country, you know, and we were just reminded once again that this is this country. But at the same time, I have such hope because I know that it's just, you know, it is what it is. It is not the real reality. You know, the real reality is that people want to move forward. People do love each other. People don't want to live in fear and hate and all this nonsense. That's just what keeps people controlled. Divisiveness, like I say, genres, divide everything. It's always about dividing and keeping things, separated from each other. Because when people come together, they know that they don't really have that big differences, and everyone just wants to, find joy in life and have a happy life for the most part. People don't want to be mean and evil. That's just not in people's nature.
Most people.
Yeah, most. But I think that's about 99% of people. And then it's just, like I said, we live in a wicked, evil ass system. Like, it's so difficult to remain human in a capitalist, system that is just outrageously out of control at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's end on a happy note, because that was coming down.
I think that is a happy note, though. It's like, because people who do manage to remain human, and I think that's a lot of the listeners of this show, and for all nerds, are that light that shines out into the universe. So,
I agree with that. Yeah. I do. I think that I'm a big believer in, as cheesy as it might sound, that we get back what we put out in the world. Mm-hmm. And excuse me. And that, even the smallest random acts of kindness can have huge ripple effects. So
true.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what are the favorite comics that you're reading right now?
Ooh, damn. Okay. Beyond my own, because I have to say
beyond Jimmy your own. That's right.
Yeah, beyond Jimi Hendrix Purple Haze. Just, I'm always amazed every time I see it. Like, it's right here. I'm like, ooh, look at that. Like, my best friend was holding it at Thanksgiving dinner the other day and was like, I grew up with this dude and now he has it in his hand. I'm signing him for him. It was a moment. Big Jim and the White Boy by Marcus Kwame and David F. Walker.
On my list to read.
Fuck hell, is good.
Marcus is my friend. He's local. He lives up in Albany, where I live.
Nice, man. That, it's like because like I said, I think my book is great, but it was like, damn, I was like, they might get it for book of the year. This shit right here is so good. I finally got to catch up. I haven't finished it, but Far Sector, the Green Lantern joint.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I can't remember the artist's name offhand, but God, yeah, he's a monster, man. It's unreal. He's too good. I'm on volume 3 because I just got on this of Something That's Killing the Children, which
that one never fails to impress.
Yeah, everyone raved about it forever. I'd actually got on the Tinian. I know I read some of his Batman stuff, but it was Christopher Chaos, the Oddly Pedestrian Life of Christopher Chaos. Because shout out to Isaac Goodhart, a good friend of mine, and I think Isaac's just doing God's work on that book. Like, he's just metamorphosing before our eyes into one of the greats. And I love the Oddly Pedestrian Life of Christopher Chaos. There's never a time if Kieran Gillen has a book out that I don't think it's one of my favorite things. And,
right.
Power Fantasy is
Fantasy, man.
Man, I got a poster back there. I love Power Fantasy. I think I'm an issue behind because I think 4 just dropped, right?
It did.
Damn it, I gotta go read that. I'm reading that tonight. Yeah.
And I misspoke. The artist of Far Sector is Jamal Campbell, not Jamal.
Yes. Yes. Campbell. Man, what a
generational talent he is.
Yeah, like it's like, where did you come from and how? It's like, when you see like Art Adams, it's like, just like, this is something different. Like, this is.
Yeah, I think he's on Superman now with Williamson.
Oh, I gotta read it. Yeah. God damn, I didn't know that. Oh my God, to see him do Superman. And that Wonder Woman, Tom King's Wonder Woman. I think I'm a couple issues behind on that. So they did the Amazon crossover that was losing me, but his Wonder Woman, that's been fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shout out to Joe Illich. I haven't got to read it yet, but he has the new Shadow Cabinet, so I gotta get that. Yep.
I did not realize that.
Yep. So I gotta get that, and I just want to make sure I'm not missing. I mean, I'm always going to miss people. It's funny. I've been so behind on comics. I think creating this book is when I first started falling behind. So I had to get back and read Farsetter, Something's Killing the Children. And I've been reading a lot of them lately. So I was trying to make sure I didn't miss anything. But I think that's it right now. Yeah.
Okay. That's a pretty good list.
Thank you. Thank you. I was trying to, I was trying to have some of the more independents as well as like, the big mainstream joints because, you love it. I fell off X-Men completely at the end of Krakoa and it hurts my soul. Like, yeah.
Yeah, there's a larger conversation there. I'm with you though.
I tried to read everybody's stuff and nothing has stuck with me. So
yeah, it's almost like the pendulum has swung too far the other way now.
Man.
Yeah, for sure. But
that hurts.
That's okay because there's a bunch of kids out there that have never read an X-Men book before, and this is the perfect place for them to pick it up.
I guess.
It's not me. So it goes. All right. Well, that's our hour. DJ Ben, thank you for hanging out with us. We do appreciate it. The book from Titan Comics is Jimi Hendrix, Purple Haze. And that bad boy is with yourself, written by yourself, Mellow Brown, with art by the legendary Tom Mandrake. So you should check that thing out because it's awesome.
Thank you so much. I really had a great time. Great doing this. Anytime, I'd love to be back. And just thank y'all. And like I said, everyone out there, and especially I just want to give a quick shout out to Anyone Comics. If you would like to get a signed copy, they have limited copies that are signed by myself, Tom, and Justin with a book plate that is also limited. So you can get that on their website. They ship nationwide, Anyone Comics.
Awesome. And just to clarify, Purple Haze is on sale now?
Oh, yeah, it's out. We dropped it July. And just to clarify, I would also say hurry up and get a copy because the first edition is, God willing, very close to selling out. But it is in some formats, it is like you can't get it at distributor level anymore.
There you go.
Yeah, it's
so
going.
Get on it.
Yep.
Well, all right. That has been yet another episode of the Comic Watchers Show. Thank you all very much for listening. He's Chad. I'm Matt. We're the Comic Watchers, and this is our show. We will be back next week.
Next week, we're going to be talking with the creative team behind Marley from Ablaze Comics.
Awesome. I can't wait to have that conversation. And
we're getting visited by three creative types next week.
Ooh. Sounds exciting. All right. Until next time, do good in the world. Support your local comic shop. Support local art. And get out there and just be good to one another. Thank you very much for listening.